In My Dreams with You, Steve Vai, that from his album Sex and Religion. How did all that one come about?
Somehow we had collaborated together, and my manager and I became his managers.
Okay.
And along with our, Ruta Sepetys, who was our office manager, and she ended up continuing to manage him for many years, after I had left California. And I also art directed, two of his albums, Sex and Religion, and then Alien Love Secrets or something. It's like very cool because I love art direction and anything that has. Remember, I told you I'm a great decorator,
Yeah.
but I'm good at art directing, imagery and all of that. People follow my Instagram, Desmond.child. We work really hard on the graphics of that stuff, and I really enjoy it. If I wasn't a musician, I'd be an art director. I know a graphic designer. I just love everything about words and print and pictures and, all that kind of stuff. And so, we worked great. And Alice Cooper had given me a motorcycle, and Steve is a big motorcycle enthusiast, so I didn't know how to ride a motorcycle, and the gas tank had a Alice Cooper skull with the spider eyes, and it
Oh,
said
very cool.
Demon Child on the side. I still have it, the gas tank, and so Steve Vai took me out, to teach me how to ride a motorcycle. I almost killed myself. Like I lost control of the bike very early on, rode up on somebody's yard. It looked like I was going 60 miles an hour into somebody's plate glass window. And at the last minute, I don't know how I did it. I stopped. I was able to stop it. And I was so frightened. I walked the motorcycle back. I killed myself, like it was like 4 blocks. I walked it back, so that's always a funny story with Steve Vai. But, he's totally, on another level, just spiritually, and his music, his musicianship he's a virtuoso. And I had seen him early on with Frank Zappa when he was just a kid, and they had come down to Miami, and they had performed in a small little club, and I remembered that him, he was so striking. And then later on, it was amazing that we got to work together.
Someone else I'd like to touch on quickly, if you don't mind, as well. Alice Cooper. Now, he was obviously a megastar, but he'd been through a dry patch as well, in better ways of putting it, probably. But Trash, the album that you worked on him with, and Poison, the first big single. I think it was 12 years since he'd had a top 10 single, and then along came Poison, a huge hit. So how did you get involved with Alice, and how were you drafted in to help him with that?
Well, there was I had a publisher, Deirdre O'Hara, and she was married to an A&R guy at Epic Records, Bob Pfeiffer, who had signed Alice Cooper. So they were looking for somebody to work with him. And so, she put me in there. The only thing I didn't realize was that Bob was a songwriter also. But there was a Sony ironclad rule that the A&R person could never co-write with the artist. They had to remain neutral, so they wouldn't be choosing the songs
Yeah.
they co-wrote, But anyway, he was, insisting, that he also be included as a songwriter and all that. And I said, absolutely not. So Alice and I basically wrote the entire record. I think there was a song he had written with Kip Winger previously that we recorded. I don't think I'm a co-writer on that, but almost all the songs were written almost like a theatrical piece, because he explained that Alice Cooper is really a character,
Yeah.
that he invented. And the way he got the name Alice Cooper was because his band was called Alice Cooper. They thought it was a cool, like, weird name. So people started calling him Alice. And so Alice has, a history, his a kind of a religious history. His father was a minister, a preacher. So the way he explained it, and he's very, religious, a very spiritual person to this day. And he's a believer and belongs to a church and all this kind of stuff. I mean, can you imagine, you look over and you go, what kind of church is this? Is this a coven? And so he said with Alice, if Alice cuts the head off a doll, you know, for shock value, he has to have his head cut off by the end of the show in the guillotine, which he still has in his show, right?
Yep.
So there's always a moral lesson. You can't be bad and survive. You know, you get punished. And so we wrote the songs this way. And so, you know, I brought every trick in the book to writing trash, and also brought all the artists that I had been having success with, Aerosmith, Bon Jovi, Joan Jett. They all contributed to the album. And, you know, I think it was like kind of like a, what they call a barn raising, but it's more like whatever, you know, set the barn on fire or whatever. In fact, there was a song called House of Fire that we had collaborated on with Joan Jett. And so that's how it all came to be. And, you know, still having a lot of problems with Bob. He didn't want me to attend the mixes. And the mixing guys, you know, said, we can't do this without Desmond. I mean, I had like 50 tracks that they didn't know what went where. So reluctantly, you know, this guy was very like always, you know, competitive and kind of seemed jealous of me and all that. So, you know, the song was great. And he went from selling 15,000 records to 4.5 million records, you know, with the record that we made and all the juice that we brought with it. He brought in Kip Winger, and Kip and I recently wrote a cool song called Proud Desperado, you know, the first time we ever co-wrote together. And in any case, when it came time for the next record, you know, I thought for sure I was going to be the producer. In fact, I had a different direction I wanted to take him in, because now we had already had, you know, 9 Inch Nails and, you know, the kind of the, you know, the start of this new kind of active rock. And a lot of it was electronic rather than, you know, just guitars. And I wanted to make, and also Ozzy Osbourne was like, you know, in No More Tears, like very cool songs, you know. And so that's the direction I wanted to take him in. And Bob convinced them not to hire me. So then Bob co-produced the album with this British producer, Peter Collins. And they started writing songs with Alice that were kind of like Desmond Child sound-alikes with a lot of modulations on all this, but the songs, you know, it wasn't successful. And the label dropped him after selling 4.5 million records. Because that record only sold like 85,000 records. How do you go from 4.5 million to 85? And, you know, to this day, I still haven't been hired back. Oh. But we remain very good friends. And I love his wife, Cheryl. And a year and a half ago, I did an evening of my music at the Parthenon in Greece as benefit for the Acropolis Museum, with the, you know, hope of encouraging the return of the Elgin marbles, right? Yeah. And because, you know, they're religious artifacts. It's not just artwork. That, you know, if you talk to any Greek person, they'll start crying when they say, you know, that it was stolen from them 200 years ago. So because my husband and I, my husband Curtis and I go there every year, ever since our children were 5 years old, to a little island called Folegandros. Every summer, we just go there and stay there a month. We make a life for ourselves. That's a home for us. So I have a lot of sympathy for the Greek people. So Alice came and performed. So did Bonnie Tyler, one of my favorite artists, Rita Wilson, who's Greek, and the Rasmus from Finland. Yeah. And Kip Winger showed up, and all these great other musicians, Tabitha Fair, Chris Willis, Andreas Carlson, the great writer-producer from Sweden. He was in the backup line for backgrounds, and we had 18-piece all-female orchestra, and it was, you know, in this outdoor amphitheater with all this video mapping on the rocks behind. Every song had a different atmosphere and set. And you know, Alice, you know, you could see who, you know, the power of Alice Cooper. He comes out and the place went crazy, and he just held their attention, and he opened with Poison and then sang Bed of Nails, which is now in his show again, which is a song that was from Trash that had been forgotten, and people by popular demand started asking him to perform it. So you know, he just he took the, you know, that stage by storm. And so I finally understood, even though I had seen Alice before, being on the stage and seeing him from that perspective up close, you could see why he's the legend that he is.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone always speaks really highly of him whenever I speak to anybody about Alice. I mean, what do you find when you worked with him? What's he like as a man?
He's just the sweetest and very intelligent, very articulate, has the funniest stories, the greatest sense of humor, loves to laugh. And I put some of his stories in the book. I can't reveal them here.
Yep.
They're not decent.